fresh from the oven. Hello, howdy, and welcome back to my kitchen and another Sourdough Saturday. I'm Kathryn and I'm the Aerogarden Homesteader. So today I am going to try to modify my favorite biscuit recipe, which comes from my grandmother, to use sourdough discard. So either we will have a learning moment here, or it'll work. So I'm making a half recipe because honestly I don't think I could eat that many biscuits. So a half recipe makes 9 biscuits. A full recipe makes 18. So do with that as you will. And if this works, modifying, my favorite recipe, then that does mean it is probably possible to modify your favorite recipe. So I will tell you how I'm modifying it, and then your mileage may vary, but you can give it a try. At least you'll have something to go off of, either based on my mistake or it worked. Okay, so that was a 1/4 cup of shortening. I'm going to put in I'm supposed to put in 2 cups of flour. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to decrease the flour by a 1/4 cup and make that up with sourdough. So that's 1 cup, that's 1 1/2, and 1 1/4. Yes, I do the scoop and swish method. So you need to do what works for your recipe. I'm going to put in 4 teaspoons of baking powder. So that's 1 tablespoon and 1 teaspoon if you're keeping track that way. 3, 4. I don't know who thought it was a good idea to write everything down in teaspoons like that. Okay, 1 teaspoon of salt. And I need 1 tablespoon of sugar. I did not get my tablespoon out, so we're going to put in 3 teaspoons. And there we go. So that is all that part. So I need to sort of cut in the shortening, plus mix all the dry stuff together. You want a little bit smaller than, pea-sized. You also want to try to not splash the flour all over the place, like I am doing. Okay. So I got some bigger pieces, some smaller pieces. That's about what we want. It does not need to be perfectly uniform, just close enough. Get some of that off the side. Okay. I don't know if you can see the type of texture. There's some pieces that are kind of big, some are kind of small. Okay, I'm going to clean my hand up a little bit and then get the remaining ingredients. Okay, remaining ingredients and not too much space. Here, let me get rid of this. Really need a sugar bowl. Okay. So I'm going to put in a 1/2 cup of starter. I know you're thinking, oh, but you took out a 1/4 cup of flour. I'm going to consider that my starter is a 1-to-1 of flour to water ratio. So that means I've got, in 1/2 cup, I would have a 1/4 cup of flour and a 1/4 cup of water. Mine's a little stiffer, so it may take a little bit more water to get where I'm going. But I don't know about your biscuit recipe, but mine is kind of flexible. Basically says add enough water to get a shaggy dough. Which is why it doesn't really matter if I do the scoop and swish method with the flour, because I just change the amount of water as needed. Okay, let's see. That is probably as close to a 1/2 cup as I'm going to get. Let's see if we can get this out now. I'm just going to mix this in a little bit, kind of like I did with the shortening. I'm going to cut it in. I'm going to just get my hands all dirty again. This might take a while. I might just have to speed this part up. I don't want to work it too much, but this is my chance to kind of work the sourdough a little bit. I guess the other option would have been to add some of the liquid and try to dilute this out so that it would mix in a little easier. Whoever says we do easy things here. Okay. So I don't want to have super big clumps. I do want this to kind of get mixed in about like the shortening did. Okay, that's looking okay. So we'll go with that. It calls for a half cup of milk. Again, remember I'm doing a half recipe. It does call for water. I will be adjusting the amount of water to take into account the amount of sourdough. Alright, that's half a cup. And I'm going to go get a half cup of water and only put in what's needed. Alright, so I'm going to put in a little bit because it will need a little bit at least. And then I'm going to just gently sort of toss it together. And you want a sort of shaggy wet dough. Get some dry spots. Okay, that's looking pretty good. Might be slightly shaggier than normal, but that's fine. I'm going to scrape this down. I'm going to let this sit for half an hour. That is going to be part of my fermentation. So there's a couple of ways you can do sourdough. You can just use up your discard, whatever. I would just shape this and put it right in the oven. But for the people who actually require the benefits of a digestion by the sourdough, you got to let it sit. Okay, so I'm going to try the half hour and see what happens, and I'm going to bake off a couple of them. And then I'm going to probably shape the rest of them, put them in the fridge for a long cold ferment, and see what that does as well. So I'm going to cover this and I'm going to let it sit for half an hour. I will bring you back when I do the shaping so you can see. I like to make mine square, but you know, do as you will. But I'll bring you back for that. Okay, so it has been half an hour and probably shouldn't have changed too much. I hope it didn't change too much. Okay, got a couple of things. I'm going to put down a nice layer of flour. I don't want to work in too much flour, but you know what? I don't want it to stick either. So keep that off to the side. Have a scraper to get this out. Oh yeah, there we go. That's sticky. Very sticky. Okay, may have put in a little too much water. That's okay. We can work in just a little bit of flour, but I don't want to work in too much. So I am supposed to get 9 out of this. I don't know if that'll happen. I might get 8. Now the layering, if you do this kind of lamination technique, it gets you nice layers. This is totally optional, but it does help a bit. Sometimes it just kind of makes them slide a little, but your mileage may vary. I get some sliding, but you know what? I keep trying anyways. Okay, so I'm going to try to just pat this into a rectangle so I can make 8. I'm going to bake off probably 4 right away and save 4 for later. The oven's preheating, so I need it at, my recipe calls for 450, which seems a little extreme, but it only needs to go in for about 16 minutes, so maybe it'll work. Okay, I'm going to divide it in half. There we go, and half, and half. This way I don't have to rework the dough. I can be a little heavy-handed sometimes, so, you know, hey, anything I can do to prevent waste and not have to work it so much. So, some of these ones on the end, I'm going to just help them square up a little bit more. Okay, I'm going to bake these ones off. You know, maybe I'll just do 3 for now. A little sample one. Got my little, I don't think this is quite a quarter sheet, but you know what? It's a cute little pan that will serve the purposes. Now, I could totally freeze it at this stage. This would be a perfect point to freeze it and then just bake off the number you need later. You can also freeze them after they have been baked. I let them cool down and then I put them in the freezer right away. That way they don't get stale, hard. And I did forget to mention earlier, my sourdough had been fed the night before. Actually, it was fed during the day and then I put it in the fridge last night. So it had its 12-hour rise. So it was fed recently, but it was from the fridge. So, just so you know. So I'm going to throw these ones in the fridge. I'm going to let them just rest in the fridge for probably overnight. and then I'll just bake them off tomorrow and see how they go. Yeah, maybe I will do 4. That way I have 40 to eat today, 40 to eat tomorrow. I don't want them to be too close on the sheet because they sometimes will touch while they're baking. So I don't mind the touching, but I don't want them to touch too much. So that's what I'm going with. So I'm just going to, as soon as the oven is done, I will get those in. Like I said, 450 seems a little extreme, but we'll go with it. I'm sure that's a typo. We made a family cookbook and we had to type everything in by hand. Ooh, that was painful. But typos happened, so we'll see. I will show you how they turn out once they get out of the oven. Fresh from the oven. This is the texture inside. It has quite a nice smell to it. I mean, it smells just like my other biscuits. Tastes like there's just that slight hint of the sourdough. These are what they look like on the tray, fresh from the oven. You can see lovely layers where you can split it. These are a little hot still. But yeah, that's what they look like. It is the next day. It's been about 24 hours, maybe 22, give or take, fresh from the oven. You can see, I don't know if you can really tell, they did spread a little bit, but they taste great. I put them in the oven for, it was 450, and it took 15 minutes in my oven. They look awesome. It tasted pretty good. There was no sourness to them, and the slight tartness that I tasted yesterday seemed to be gone from today. So I did brush the tops with butter. You can brush the tops with whatever you want. I normally brush with butter when I take them out of the oven, but you know, hey, your kitchen, your rules. You eat what you like. So this is it. So you have options for making biscuits with discard. You could bake them off right away. You can allow them to cold ferment overnight just to get some more of the benefits. But that's it. I will have a link at the end of the video for the last sourdough recipe, and I will also try to link the how to make your starter video as well, so you can follow along. But if you found this useful, it would be really nice if you would like and share so other people can also find this video, and make sure you hit that subscribe button so you can stay informed of when I post the next video. And I will see you next time on the Aerogarden Homestead.